Captain Theron stood on the bridge of his salvage vessel, staring at the display screen with disbelief. For 15 years, he had commanded the quantum drift through the safer regions of explored space, recovering abandoned stations and derelict cargo haulers. Nothing in his career had prepared him for this moment. "Run the scan again," he ordered, his voice tight with uncertainty. Vecca, his science officer, worked her console with practiced efficiency. Her multiple arms moved across the controls in a blur of motion. "Captain, the results are identical. The signal originates from the Forbidden Zone. And the materials, they match nothing in our databases. The Forbidden Zone. Every species in the Galactic Council knew to avoid that region of space. Ships that ventured too deep never returned. Strange radiation anomalies made navigation nearly impossible, and ancient warnings from long-dead civilizations spoke of dangers better left undisturbed. Yet here they were, at the very edge of that darkness, looking at something that should not exist." Theron moved closer to the main viewport as his ship approached the source of the signal. What emerged from the black void made his blood run cold. A warship hung suspended in space, massive and scarred by battle. Its hull was a patchwork of repairs and damage, yet it remained structurally intact despite what must have been decades of exposure to the harsh environment. "What class of vessel is that?" Theron asked. Vecca's voice trembled slightly as she responded. "Unknown, Captain. But I'm detecting hull composition that shouldn't be possible. The stress tolerances alone would require materials we've only theorized about. Whoever built this came from a world with extreme conditions." Theron felt his secondary heart begin to race. He pulled up the planetary classification system on his personal display. There were 15 levels, ranging from Class 1 garden worlds with gentle climates to Class 15 death worlds where conditions were so extreme that life itself seemed impossible. "Vecca, what's your analysis of the builder's homeworld based on the ship's specifications?" The science officer worked in silence for several minutes. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Class 15, Captain. This ship was built by beings from a Class 15 death world." The bridge fell completely silent. Every crew member stopped their tasks and turned to look at Theron. In all of recorded galactic history, no Class 15 world had ever produced intelligent life. The conditions on such planets were simply too hostile. Gravity that could crush bones, radiation that destroyed cellular structure, atmospheric compositions that were toxic to every known species, temperature extremes that ranged from boiling to freezing within hours. Evolution on such worlds was considered theoretically impossible. Any life that managed to emerge would be destroyed before it could develop beyond the most primitive forms. "That can't be right," Theron said firmly. "Check your calculations again." "I've run them 4 times, Captain. The results don't change. The gravity alone on their homeworld must be at least 3 times standard. The atmosphere would be corrosive to our kind. And the radiation levels." Vecca trailed off, unable to finish. Theron studied the derelict ship more carefully. Now that he looked closer, he could see the brutal efficiency in its design. Every angle, every reinforced section, every weapon mounting spoke of a species that built for survival above all else. This was not a ship designed for comfort or beauty. It was a weapon, a fortress, a last desperate stand against the universe itself. He zoomed in on the hull markings, trying to decipher the language. The translation matrix struggled with the harsh, angular symbols. Finally, words appeared on his screen. "HMS Defiant." "What does HMS mean?" Theron wondered aloud. "Unknown, Captain. But Defiant translates clearly. It means to resist, to challenge, to refuse surrender." How appropriate, Theron thought. A ship from an impossible world, bearing a name that spoke of endless resistance. "Captain," his security chief interrupted. "I'm detecting faint power signatures aboard the vessel. Some systems are still active." "After all this time? How long has it been drifting here?" "Based on the decay patterns and battle damage, I'd estimate at least 30 standard years, possibly more." Theron made his decision. "Prepare a boarding team. Full environmental suits, maximum protection. We're going over there." "Sir, is that wise?" "We don't know what killed the crew." "That's exactly why we're going," Theron replied. "The Galactic Council needs to know about this. If a Class 15 species managed to reach space, everything we understand about the universe is wrong." As his crew prepared for the boarding operation, Theron couldn't shake a feeling of deep unease. The ship floating before them represented something unprecedented, something that challenged the fundamental laws of biology and evolution. What kind of beings could survive a Class 15 death world? And more importantly, what had happened to them? The boarding tube connected with a metallic clang that echoed through both vessels. Theron led his team of 6 across the umbilical passage, each member wearing the heaviest protective suits available. The airlock of the Defiant loomed before them like the entrance to a tomb. "Atmospheric readings?" Theron asked through his helmet comm. "Thin but present, Captain," Vecca responded from behind him. "Oxygen content is actually higher than our standard mix. Temperature is cold but survivable. However, the gravity—" She paused. "Captain, it's reading at 3.2 times our standard. I recommend we activate the support systems in our suits." Theron felt the servos in his suit engage as the artificial support kicked in. Even with the assistance, he could feel the extra weight pressing down on his body. How could any species move naturally in such conditions? The inner airlock opened with a hiss of ancient mechanisms. The team moved forward into the corridor beyond, and Theron immediately understood why the gravity was so intense. Everything about the ship's interior was built stronger than necessary. The walls were reinforced with supports that seemed excessive. The floor plating was twice as thick as standard design. Even the handrails were constructed to withstand tremendous force. "They built this ship to mirror their homeworld," Theron said quietly. "They actually chose to live in these conditions." The corridor stretched ahead into darkness. Emergency lighting flickered weakly every few meters, casting long shadows that danced across the walls. The team's helmet lights cut through the gloom as they advanced deeper into the vessel. They passed crew quarters that were spartanly furnished but showed signs of long habitation. Personal items were secured to walls and shelves, each one carefully tied down as if the occupants expected sudden movements or impacts. Theron noticed images displayed on some walls, showing landscapes of impossible beauty and terrible danger. Mountains that reached into toxic atmospheres. Oceans that crashed with waves 3 times the height of any on his homeworld. Forests where every plant seemed designed to kill. "This is their world," Vecca whispered, examining one of the images. "This is what they called home." The team entered what appeared to be a command center or data archive. Vecca immediately moved to the nearest console and began attempting to interface with the ship's systems. To everyone's surprise, emergency power responded to her touch and screens flickered to life. Data began flowing across the displays in that harsh, angular language. The translation matrix worked slowly, piecing together words and meanings from context and mathematical patterns. "I'm accessing their logs," Vecca announced. "Captain, you need to see this." Theron moved beside her as a translated document appeared on the screen. It was a mission report, dated according to an alien calendar system that meant nothing to him. But the content was clear enough. The ship belonged to something called the Human Colonial Fleet. They had been traveling to establish a new settlement when they were ambushed by Vorzan raiders. The Vorzans were well known to the Galactic Council as aggressive pirates who terrorized the outer sectors. But what happened next defied belief. According to the logs, the humans had fought back. Not just defended themselves but actively engaged the Vorzan fleet in direct combat. The report listed 7 Vorzan warships destroyed before the Defiant had taken critical damage and been forced to retreat. 7 warships? Theron's security chief breathed. The Vorzans are some of the most dangerous fighters in known space. How could one damaged ship destroy 7 of them? Vecca continued reading. The logs describe their homeworld, Captain. They call it Earth. Gravity is 3.1 times standard. Atmosphere is 21% oxygen. Surface radiation from their sun causes cellular damage. Weather systems produce storms with winds that can level structures. Tectonic activity causes ground displacement events they call earthquakes. And the native life. She paused, her voice filled with horror. Captain, everything on their planet evolved as either predator or prey. Their entire ecosystem is based on violence. Before Theron could respond, his helmet sensors shrieked a warning. Motion detected. Multiple contacts approaching from 3 different corridors. The team immediately formed a defensive circle, weapons raised. Identify yourselves. Theron called out, his translator broadcasting the message in all known languages. Silence answered him. Then, from the shadows ahead, figures began to emerge. They moved with fluid grace despite the heavy gravity, their forms smaller than Theron expected but clearly powerful. They wore armor that looked like it had been repaired 1,000 times, welded and patched and held together through sheer determination. The lead figure stopped 3 meters away. Slowly, deliberately, they reached up and unsealed their helmet. The faceplate lifted away, and Theron found himself looking at a creature unlike any he had ever encountered. It was a female human. Her face was marked with scars that spoke of countless battles. Her eyes were sharp and intelligent, filled with a wariness that came from decades of survival. She breathed the thin, cold air of the ship as if it were the sweetest atmosphere in the galaxy. "Commander Kate Morrison," she said in a voice rough from disuse. "HMS Defiant. You're the first non-hostile contacts we've encountered in 30 years. Welcome aboard." Theron slowly lowered his weapon, signaling his team to do the same. Kate Morrison stood before him without any protective gear, breathing air that his suit sensors labeled as barely adequate. Behind her, a dozen more humans emerged from the shadows, each one wearing the same battered armor, each one watching the newcomers with careful eyes. 30 years. Theron managed to say. "You've been stranded here for 30 years? Kate nodded, a slight smile crossing her scarred face. "Give or take a few months. We stopped counting after the first decade. Time loses meaning when you're just trying to survive another day." Vecca stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. "Commander Morrison, how is it possible? The life support systems, the food supplies, the psychological strain of isolation. No known species could endure such conditions for so long." Kate gestured down the corridor. "Come. I'll show you what humans can endure when we have no other choice." The team followed the humans deeper into the ship. Theron noticed how easily the humans moved in the crushing gravity while his team struggled even with powered assistance. They passed through sections that had been converted into living spaces, work areas, and even a small garden where plants grew under artificial lighting. "We salvaged what we could from the other ships in our fleet," Kate explained as they walked. "Hydroponic systems, medical supplies, spare parts. We've been cannibalizing equipment for 3 decades, keeping the Defiant alive one repair at a time." They entered what appeared to be a common area where more humans waited. Children played in one corner, their laughter strange and bright in the dim surroundings. Elderly humans sat together, their faces weathered but their eyes still sharp. Young adults worked on equipment, their hands moving with practiced skill. "There are children here," Theron said in shock. "Born on this ship?" 17 of them, Kate confirmed. "They've never seen Earth, never felt real sunlight or breathed unfiltered air. But they're human and they're survivors just like the rest of us." A tall human male approached, extending his hand in a gesture Theron had learned meant greeting. "Jack Fletcher, second in command. You're wondering how we did it, aren't you? How we lasted this long?" Theron nodded, accepting the hand gesture awkwardly through his gloved suit. Jack led them to a wall covered in images and documents. "This is Earth, our homeworld. Let me tell you what it takes to be human." The images showed a planet of stunning beauty and terrible danger. Blue oceans covered most of the surface, but Jack explained how those waters could produce storms called hurricanes that destroyed everything in their path. Green forests stretched across continents, but every plant and animal was part of a constant struggle for survival. "This creature," Jack said, pointing to an image of a massive predator with enormous teeth, "used to hunt our ancestors. We called them lions. And these," he indicated flying creatures with sharp talons, "are eagles. They could strike from the sky without warning." Vecca examined the images with growing horror. "Your world tried to kill you at every opportunity." "Every single day," Jack agreed. "But we learned to fight back. We made tools, weapons, strategies. We turned from prey into hunters. Then we conquered diseases that killed millions of us. We survived ice ages that should have ended our species. We endured droughts, floods, earthquakes, and volcanic eruptions. Every disaster made us stronger." Kate joined them, her voice taking on a tone of pride. "When the Vorzans attacked our colony fleet, they expected us to surrender. They'd raided dozens of other species and everyone always surrendered. But they didn't understand what humans are." "What happened?" Theron asked, though he'd already read the logs. "We fought," Kate said simply. "We had 3 colony ships and 2 military escorts against a Vorzan battle fleet of 12 warships. They destroyed our escorts and 2 colony ships in the first hour. We should have surrendered then. Any rational species would have. But you didn't." "No. We converted the Defiant into a weapon. We used our cargo as improvised explosives. We rammed damaged sections of our ship into their vessels. We fought with everything we had because surrender isn't in our nature. Earth taught us that giving up means death." Jack pulled up tactical recordings on a functioning screen. Theron watched in amazement as the Defiant engaged Vorzan warships in close combat, using maneuvers that should have torn the ship apart. The humans piloted their vessel through debris fields, used asteroid clusters for cover, and struck with a ferocity that seemed impossible. 7 Vorzan ships destroyed, Kate continued. But we took critical damage. Our navigation systems failed and we ended up here, stranded in the Forbidden Zone. We've been waiting ever since, keeping the ship operational, keeping our people alive, never giving up hope. Theron looked around at the humans, seeing them with new understanding. These weren't monsters or threats. They were survivors in the truest sense, shaped by a world so harsh that it had forged them into something extraordinary. Your people, Theron said carefully. Earth must be desperate to find you. Kate's expression darkened. We don't know if Earth even exists anymore, Captain. The Vorzans hit our colony fleet 30 years ago. For all we know, they've continued their attacks. Our homeworld might be ash and ruins by now. The weight of those words settled over the room like a heavy blanket. 30 years of survival, of hope, of refusing to surrender, all without knowing if they had anything left to return to. We need to talk, Theron said finally. There are things you need to know about the Galactic Council, and decisions that must be made. Theron sat across from Kate in what had once been the captain's ready room of the Defiant. The space was cramped and worn, but maintained with military precision. Between them on the table, a holographic display showed data that Vecca had discovered in the Galactic Council archives. I need to be honest with you, Commander, Theron began, his voice heavy with concern. What I'm about to tell you could change everything. Kate leaned forward, her scarred hands folded on the table. I've survived 30 years on a dying ship, Captain. Whatever you have to say, I can handle it. Theron activated the display. Ancient text appeared, written in the formal language of the Galactic Council. This is Protocol 7 Alpha. It was established approximately 2,000 years ago, after the Council encountered something that terrified them. What kind of something? Kate asked. A species from a Class 14 death world. They were incredibly strong, aggressive, and resistant to almost every environmental hazard. Within 50 years of discovering space travel, they had conquered 3 neighboring systems. The Council was forced to fight a war that lasted decades and cost billions of lives. Kate's expression remained neutral, but Theron could see the tension in her shoulders. And? The species was eventually contained, but the Council learned a terrible lesson. They established a new protocol for any future encounters with Death World species. Theron highlighted a section of the text. Any intelligent life discovered from a Class 15 Death World must be immediately quarantined or eliminated. The words hung in the air between them like a death sentence. Kate stood slowly, walking to the small viewport that showed the stars beyond. For a long moment she said nothing. So you're telling me that if you report us, your council will send warships to destroy us, she said finally. Or attempt to contain your entire species on your homeworld, preventing you from ever leaving your solar system again, Theron added. The protocol is very clear. Class 15 species are considered too dangerous to allow into the greater galactic community. Kate turned back to face him and Theron saw something burning in her eyes. Not anger, not fear, but determination. Captain, let me explain something about humans. We don't respond well to threats. Earth spent millions of years trying to kill us and we're still here. The Vorzans tried to destroy our colony fleet and we're still here. If your council sends ships to cage us, they'll discover exactly why Class 15 worlds produce survivors. I understand your position, Theron said carefully. But you need to understand the scale of what you're facing. The Galactic Council commands fleets of thousands of warships. They have weapons that can sterilize entire planets. Your ship, remarkable as it is, cannot stand against that kind of force. Maybe not, Kate admitted. But humans don't fight because we think we can win. We fight because the alternative is surrender, and surrender means death. We learned that lesson on Earth, and it's burned into our genetic memory. Jack Fletcher entered the room, having been summoned by Kate moments earlier. Captain Theron is right about one thing, he said. We can't fight the entire Galactic Council. But we also can't let them lock humanity away on Earth forever. We're explorers, adventurers, survivors. Keeping us confined to one world would be like caging a bird that was born to fly. Theron stood, pacing the small room as he wrestled with his decision. My duty is clear. I should report this discovery immediately. The Council has a right to know that a Class 15 species has achieved space travel. But, Kate prompted, sensing his hesitation. But I've seen what you are, Theron admitted. You're not the monsters the protocol was designed to contain. You're survivors who want to go home, who've endured 3 decades of isolation without losing your humanity. You have children on this ship who laugh and play despite never knowing a real world. You're not conquerors. You're just people trying to find your way back to where you belong. Vecca entered the room, her expression troubled. Captain, I've been analyzing the Vorzan attack patterns. They've increased their raids in this sector by 40% over the last 5 years. Colony worlds are being abandoned because the Council can't protect them. We need allies, not more enemies. Kate looked between them. What are you suggesting? Theron made his decision, knowing it would likely end his career but unable to see any other path forward. I'm suggesting we help each other. My crew will help repair the Defiant and get your people home. In return, you help us drive the Vorzans out of this sector. We'll show the Council that Death World species can be valuable allies. And when they find out? Kate asked. Because they will find out eventually. Humans have a way of making ourselves known. Then we'll have proven our point, Theron replied. We'll have shown that cooperation works better than containment. That trust is stronger than fear. Jack crossed his arms. You're risking everything on a hope, Captain. Your career, your crew's safety, possibly even your life if the Council decides you've committed treason. I know, Theron said quietly. But I've spent my career salvaging broken things and making them useful again. Maybe it's time I applied that philosophy to something more important than abandoned cargo haulers. Kate extended her hand across the table. Then we have an agreement. But understand this, Captain. If your Council does come for us with hostile intent, humans will defend themselves. We won't start a war, but we won't run from one either. Theron clasped her hand firmly. Then let's make sure it never comes to that. Let's prove that even beings from a Class 15 Death World can be part of something greater. The repair work began immediately. Theron's crew worked alongside the humans, and what started as an uneasy cooperation gradually transformed into genuine respect. The Viridian engineers marveled at how the humans had kept the Defiant operational with limited resources and sheer determination. In turn, the humans eagerly learned about modern galactic technology that had advanced significantly in the 30 years since their isolation began. Vecca found herself working closely with a human engineer named Emma Reed, a young woman who had been born on the ship and had never known any other home. Emma's understanding of the Defiant systems was instinctive, learned through years of necessity. Your people are remarkable, Vecca said one day as they worked together on the main reactor. I've never seen such adaptability. Emma smiled, her hands moving confidently through a tangle of power conduits that would have baffled most engineers. My mother used to say that humans are like water. We find a way through any obstacle or we reshape ourselves to flow around it. We don't break easily. What happened to your mother? Vecca asked gently. She died 6 years ago. Medical complications we couldn't treat with our limited supplies. Emma's voice was steady, but Vecca could hear the pain beneath. She made me promise I'd see Earth someday even though she never would. That's what keeps me going. Over the following weeks, the two ships became a unified operation. Theron reported to the Council that he had discovered the wreckage of the Defiant, claiming all hands were lost. He requested authorization to remain in the sector to investigate Vorzan activity, which was granted without question. Meanwhile, the Defiant slowly came back to life. Systems that had been dormant for decades began functioning again. The main engines, which had barely maintained position for 30 years, were rebuilt with new components. Weapon systems were upgraded with technology the humans had never seen before. Kate stood on her bridge, watching her crew work with renewed purpose. Jack approached from the tactical station, a grim expression on his face. Long-range sensors just detected something, he said quietly. Vorzan raiding party, 3 ships, heading toward a civilian mining colony 2 systems away. Kate looked at Theron, who stood beside her command chair. This is what we talked about, Captain. A chance to prove ourselves. Theron nodded slowly. The colony has maybe 500 inhabitants. Mostly families. The Council garrison there consists of 1 patrol ship that can't stand against 3 Vorzan raiders. Then we don't have time to debate, Kate said firmly. She turned to her crew. All hands to battle stations. Helm, plot an intercept course. Engineering, I need maximum power to engines and weapons. The bridge erupted into controlled chaos as the humans moved to their positions with practiced efficiency. Emma's voice came through the comm from engineering. Commander, we're pushing systems that haven't run at full capacity in 30 years. I can't guarantee they'll hold. They'll hold, Kate replied with absolute confidence. They're human-built. They don't know how to quit. The Defiant and the Quantum Drift entered hyperspace together, racing toward the endangered colony. When they emerged near the mining station, the scene was already dire. The Vorzan ships had begun their attack, and the single Council patrol vessel was taking heavy damage. Vorzans don't know we're here yet, Jack reported. They're focused on the colony. Kate's expression turned cold. Good. Let's remind them why they should fear Death World species. All weapons open fire. The Defiant struck like a hammer from the darkness. 30 years of rage and frustration poured into that first attack. The lead Vorzen ship never had a chance to react before its shields collapsed under the brutal assault. Human weapons, designed for the crushing gravity and extreme conditions of Earth, hit with devastating force. Second target, evasive maneuvers. Jack called out. The Defiant twisted through space with impossible grace. The humans piloted their ship the way their ancestors had once hunted across Earth's plains, with instinct and determination. The Vorzen raiders found themselves facing something they had never encountered before, a prey species that had become the ultimate predator. Theron watched from his own bridge as the battle unfolded. His weapons officer looked at him with wide eyes. "Captain, they're fighting with tactics I've never seen. They're using debris as weapons, drawing the Vorzens into crossfire patterns, sacrificing shield strength for speed and positioning. That's how you survive a death world," Theron said quietly. "You learn that every resource is a weapon, every moment is a chance, and hesitation means death." The battle lasted only 17 minutes. When it ended, 2 Vorzen ships were destroyed and the third was fleeing at maximum speed, its hull scarred and smoking. Kate opened a channel to the mining colony. "This is Commander Kate Morrison of the HMS Defiant. The immediate threat has been neutralized. Is everyone safe?" The response came back filled with gratitude and confusion. "Who are you? We've never heard of your ship or your species." Kate smiled, looking at Theron through the viewscreen connection between their bridges. "We're humans, and we're here to help." In the days that followed, word spread through the sector. A mysterious ship crewed by beings from an unknown world had saved a colony from Vorzen raiders. More sightings followed as the Defiant and Quantum Drift continued their patrols, protecting vulnerable settlements and driving back pirate attacks. Finally, the time came for the Defiant to attempt the journey home. The crew gathered on the bridge, many of them emotional as they prepared to leave the region that had been their prison for so long. Emma stood at the helm, her hands steady on the controls. "Course plotted for Earth, Commander. All systems green." Kate placed a hand on her shoulder. "Your mother would be proud of you, Emma. We're finally going home." She turned to Theron, who had brought his ship alongside one final time. "Captain, I don't know how to thank you. You risked everything for people you just met." "You showed me that fear makes poor policy," Theron replied. "And that death world species aren't threats to be eliminated, but allies to be valued. When the Council learns about humans, and they will, I'll make sure they understand that." "What will you tell them?" Kate asked. "The truth. That I found the most remarkable survivors in the galaxy, and that they chose cooperation over conflict. That they protected the innocent and asked nothing in return. That they're exactly the kind of allies we need." The Defiant's engines flared to life, burning brighter than they had in 3 decades. Kate gave one final salute to Theron before turning to her crew. "Take us home, Emma." The ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying its crew toward Earth and toward a future where humans would take their place among the stars. Behind them, they left a sector safer than it had been in years and a Viridian captain who would spend the rest of his career arguing that Death World species deserved a chance. The age of humanity in the galaxy had begun, not with conquest or aggression, but with survival, honor, and an unwillingness to ever surrender.